We are talking stress today. Not that any of you have any kind of stress right now. Am I right? Yeah, there's nothing going on in the world. It's not the holiday season. You have zero stress. But many of you might be feeling like your thyroid is out of whack or like your thyroid medication isn't working quite right. Are you with me yet? You are the ones that are sitting back and you're saying a couple different things. Number one, okay, I'm gaining weight and I was doing just fine and I was optimized and I was cruising. And all of a sudden, you start to go haywire and you're like, what the hell is going on right now? And then other people might be like, you know what? I feel almost too wired. I feel like I'm on too much medication. I feel like I drank 5 cups of coffee. And it's that handling of the stress that can wreak havoc on your body, wreak havoc on your thyroid. So that is why today I am bringing you a very special guest, my dear friend, Dr. Irene Cop. She specializes in this. Oh, she's looking so beautiful. Let me bring you in. Oh, look at you. You look gorgeous today.
Thank you, beautiful.
Irene, welcome. Thank you for joining us and bringing us your wisdom on this topic that, I mean, let's face it, we're in a world of stress right now. So I would love to know more about you. Tell the listeners about you. Tell them how you came into this space of helping people. And then we're going to tie this all like to thyroid and weight and hormones and have fun with it.
Oh, love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Amy. So, yeah, good question. How did I end up doing what I'm doing? I was first and foremost a chiropractor, doctor of chiropractic, also practiced acupuncture. I was a neurophysiological meditation instructor and single mom, and who thought I was superwoman on top of the world, working like a workaholic when I didn't have my 2 young sons, on the board of the PTA, board of the Business Improvement. So you get the idea, right?
Not overdoing it at all.
No, not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. And one day I was driving north. I live in Canada, folks, and I was driving 3.5 hours to visit a dear friend of mine. And long story short, the road curved and I kept driving straight into a massive 3-story rock face because I had lost consciousness because of a physical condition that I didn't know I had. And that physical condition was because I was physically burned out and didn't know it. Mm-hmm. Now, I broke 10 bones. My youngest son, who was 4 at the time, had a catastrophic brain injury. My 6-year-old son automatically had PTSD because there were adults vomiting at what they were witnessing at the scene, let alone him. And it was during the first SARS quarantine. Like, remember SARS? I know it was like a blip. It was like the first COVID, but like,
yeah,
it was actually more virulent, so it didn't last as long. So I was in hospital on SARS quarantine and in one hospital, and I was going crazy with fear for my kids because I couldn't see them. I didn't know, like it took 2 weeks for them to decide that my youngest son was even going to live, let alone what he would be left with. And I was getting these reports that my 6-year-old son was being constantly suspended from school, threatening to hurt others, threatening to hurt himself. And in amongst this fear and also being by myself because I couldn't have visitors, I was literally spiraling down in guilt and shame and remorse. Like, what kind of mother was I? What kind of doctor was I to not know? What kind of monster was I? And it truly was the lowest moment of my life that, did I deserve my kids? Was I a danger to them? Was I an incompetent mother? Did I deserve to live? And in that darkest moment, remember, dark I almost said hotel room. I wish. Hospital room, all by myself. And I'm bawling my eyes out. And I realized I had a choice. I could continue to spiral down and I could give up and say, you know, to my inner judge and jury who had convicted me and said, you're worthless.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're right. I don't deserve them. I should just let their dad have them, and I should never have anything to do with them again. I should, you know, fall off the face of the earth. I should suffer. Or I could give myself the grace to understand that far from being a monster, I was simply doing what millions of others were doing at that time, and even more so now. We can honestly say billions of people are doing now. And that was that I was burned out. And I was burned out because I was doing my best for my kids, for my patients, for my community. In other words, I was giving, giving, giving until I was bled dry. And I recognized that I was the perfect person to take this on. And I take this on because it is a cause. Call me a rebel with a cause, because we are programmed in society that we must achieve to be worthy.
Yeah.
That we have to, as women especially, apologize if there's men in your audience, we women especially are programmed that we are supposed to be martyrs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And give to everyone else before we give whatever little crumbs are left over to ourselves. It's expected in our society, right? Work, 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 work.
Yep.
And, you know, God forbid you take time off. And there's a shame and stigma associated with it that if we dare even say, hey, I need help, then we are weak.
Mm-hmm.
We are a failure. Simone Biles discovered this in the Tokyo Olympics just recently, where, you know, she's already proven herself. And then when she got a case of the twisties because she felt burned out and had mental health concerns and fears for her safety because of it, the senator, I believe, of Texas was like, well, if you just wanted a vacation, take it on your own time, Missy. Like, that was in essence what he said. There were top podcast hosts and broadcasters who tore strips off her verbally because she obviously didn't have what it took. And this is what they were saying about somebody who is, I believe, the most decorated gymnast in history.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, there is a shame and a stigma that I am determined to eradicate. And I'm determined to eradicate burnout because it truly is a hidden, silent pandemic that is far more dangerous. And I'm going to be sacrilegious here and say this isn't political. It's far more dangerous than COVID because it causes or aggravates and contributes to our top killers worldwide. Our top 10 killers worldwide every single year. And that's just going to skyrocket now more than ever with the chronic stress, the strain, the uncertainty of COVID. And so when I was lying in my hospital bed, I realized that with my clinical background, my education, and then my personal experience, that I was the one to deliver that message and to show people the way out. And so fast forward 18 years, I went searching for the answers. Number one, on how to heal my family, because my youngest son, once they decided he was going to live, I was told he would never walk again, he would never talk again, and he would never pass high school.
Oh my
I'm happy to say he is a poster child for neuroplasticity. He not only walks and talks, he's in his 4th year of engineering at one of the best schools in Canada.
That's amazing.
Thank you. My oldest is doing great. I have surpassed all prognoses, and it took work. and it took belief, and it took searching for the answers, because conventional medicine, and Dr. Amy, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, conventional medicine does not recognize the ability of the body to heal itself, and that there are answers, even if conventional medicine doesn't have it. Because when I suggested to the neurosurgeon that neuroplasticity could be at play, he went, "No, you don't understand. The brain tissue is gone. I tell you, it's gone." And I've seen the SPECT scans. My youngest son is missing literally like a third of his left hemisphere. That's about 20% of your brain. If for those mathematicians, don't ask me to be a mathematician.
Right.
And neuroplasticity means that other parts of the brain have taken it over.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to let you know that, so you don't get hung like, oh my gosh, my first son. No, he's doing awesome. He really is. He's doing awesome. They both are.
No, I'm glad you shared that. Yeah, because I'm sure people are wondering, because this is a powerful story.
Yes. And the reason I tell that story is not for the pity party part of it and the poor us. It is for people to know that if those answers helped my family and me heal against all odds,
Mm-hmm.
then it is, I then turn around and use those answers to help my clients for many, many years. And when I say search for answers, I have something like, well, I went back and got my medical degree and became specialized in brain injury so that I could go head to head with or toe to toe with the experts
Yep.
on the subjects. I got like 6 or 7 coaching certifications, and I'm not bragging. I'm saying I went looking for the answers because it was absolutely a non-negotiable that I not help my family heal.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what I realized after I helped them heal, and then I started working with my clients, and I was getting so-called miraculous results on everything from severe pain to neurological conditions to autoimmune to and I was like, what do you mean? This isn't rocket science. The answers are there. You just have to go find them. Like I truly believe it's not, I'm not some holier than thou. It's that I went to the trouble and invested my time, energy, and money into finding the answers. And so fast forward 18 years, and I'm bringing that out to the world and showing people that they can shift from stress to success
Mm-hmm.
in every area of their life, because true success is an inside job, and it is not just career and wealth. It's your health and energy, it's your relationships, your personal life, because you cannot truly have success in one area of life without having it in every other area. If you believe that, you're deluding
Mm-hmm.
yourself.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. I agree.
and that is why I'm here, because stress impacts us very, very physically. And that includes causing and contributing to autoimmune conditions like thyroid.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I am so happy to be here with you, Dr. Amy.
Oh, I'm so happy you're here. Let's just unpack your story. That's the first time that I've heard that. So Dr.
Oh,
Irene and I have known each other for a while. I have not heard that powerful, powerful story before until right now. So I'm just blown away. But it explains why you're here. We all do a pain to purpose story. I couldn't compare the pain that I went through with undiagnosed hypothyroidism with the pain of being in a car accident with your children. I mean, that is intense. But that is what brought you into this space. And sometimes things do happen to us to lead us into a place to help others. And that's exactly the path that you're on. So it's amazing. I'm so grateful that your family's okay and that your kids are doing well, but how much learning you had with them and with yourself through the years is, I mean, you can't even pay for that kind of learning. I mean, you got the book knowledge and then you got to apply it. So that's incredibly powerful. But I want to go back to the day or what you were doing prior to that accident. You were overworking yourself. And let's sit there for a moment, because there are a lot of type A drivers that listen to this show. We're all there, even if you don't have to, don't think that you have to be an entrepreneur or you have to be a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that to be under stress. You could be a mom, which I think is the hardest job in the world. And you could be running your household and you could be dealing with mask mandates and vaccine mandates. And your kid can't play with these kids and your kid's not doing well in school because he's cyber school half the time and in school half the, you're trying to clean the house. It could be that, and you're burning the candle at both ends. So let's talk a little bit about that type of stress that you were under. And what do you think happened to your body? Do you think it was a cortisol crash? Do you think you had like a blood clot? What happened?
I love it. And I want to back up one moment and totally agree with you that I know doctors tend to think that we're immune to everything. We're not. That's why doctors make the worst patients. Right? Because we think we have all the answers. And I'll include myself in that. I'm a recovering programming of that. And I have what I lovingly call my real life heroes. And to me, real life heroes are ordinary people doing extraordinary things because they see the need and because they believe they can. And to me, that is the definition of a mom. Every single day.
Yeah.
I don't know of a single mom that would not, give their life for their child.
Mm-hmm.
And dads too. And so it's not just what we consider to be heroes, like the astronauts or the firefighters or even the first line responders. They're amazing and I love them. And when you have that calling, that purpose-driven life that you already want to give and contribute, and that is our nature. And then you add in that special calling where we just want to give and give, because guess what? Our population needs us. Whatever our population is, it may be our children. It may be our students as a teacher. It might be our patients or clients.
Yep.
Whatever it is, it's like we're there. We want to help them, right? That's why we're there. And at the same time, what I recognized, because even then, Dr. Amy, I did everything right. Like, I was a doctor, a chiropractor, so I was already holistic.
Right.
Right. And I say holistic practitioners are like the original functional medicine practitioners.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right? For the root cause and lifestyle. So I ate right. I slept well, aside from the fact that I had 2 young kids, right?
Right.
I exercised, I did yoga, I meditated. I was a meditation instructor. I did all the so-called self-care stuff, and I'm not dissing self-care. It's very, very important. What I realized, and I had a lot of time on SARS quarantine to think, because I was on total bed rest, could not move like at all. And because I had broken both sides of my pelvis and a whole bunch of other bones. So in all that time, I had to think about, why did this happen? Why did this happen? I don't understand why it happened. And that introspection, that time gave me the ability to see that I was set up for failure. And I'll explain that we are designed for success. When you think of a baby who is born with its own set of special gifts, talents, and genius, I don't care if they have Down syndrome or what. It's like we all have our special gifts that we are born with. And we have an innate need to grow into the full potential of that. A baby knows that. That's the genius of a baby. They don't feel content just to lay on their back and coo and have somebody, do everything for them. The human race wouldn't survive, number one. Whereas they innately know, no, I want to roll over. I want to sit up. I want to crawl. I want to walk. I want to talk, and I want to go to school, and I'm excited to go to school and then get a car, and drive a car. Basically, we constantly want to grow.
Mhm.
And somewhere along the way, we are set up for failure by the mostly well-meaning, fear-based programming, teachings, and beliefs that are installed in us. We download like sponges as children. And it's that programming that sets us up for failure. Thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. You have to achieve to be worthy,
Yes,
right?
that's a big
That
one. Mhm.
it is a huge, huge, huge big one. You have to
Mhm.
care what people think about you. And then and multiple, like I came from an abusive childhood. So with a father with PTSD as a veteran,
Mhm.
and he did what any good soldier did at the time. He self-medicated with alcohol and took his rage out on his family and didn't even remember afterwards.
Yep.
Right? So I learned very early on that I had to be perfect or don't show up at all. How many of us are in that, even if it's not that specific scenario?
Mhm.
How many of us learn that we have to be perfect? And then add in those little idiosyncrasies of being a child with no logic. Well, I'm to blame that mommy got sick, or that
Yeah.
my parents are fighting,
Mhm.
or that they separated. In other words, if I were a good girl, if I were a bad boy, we would all be happy. I know as a child, this is the twisted logic of a child, but it gets internalized.
It
And
does.
it does. And we carry those burdens with us, thinking that if I were a better person, if I were just if I got that extra 10%,
Mhm.
then I would be so much I would make my family happy and they wouldn't fight.
And then you add on top of that media and social media, and it's just getting worse with the filters. It's just getting worse that you can basically Photoshop yourself on your phone. It's just
Yeah.
getting worse with more and more reality TV shows
Mhm.
that now it's you have to achieve a certain look. Your body has to be a certain way. And of course, you and I experienced that when we were young, even with Barbies and Teen Beat magazine and whatnot and Cosmo. But it's so much more pronounced now with social media that you have to be perfect. You have to look a certain way in order to be accepted. And
Yeah.
that's just adding a whole nother layer on to whatever was ingrained as a child. And I see this a lot with my patients, even though I'm dealing with thyroid and hormones, I want to know what kind of stressors they're dealing with in their life. And the things that I see written out, I'm sure are not surprising to you, but sometimes they make my jaw drop of how much trauma and stress people have been through in their life. And
Yes.
no wonder it's affecting their health.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And and you brought up a really great point that we women, especially, sorry guys, women just have that added layer, and I
Yep.
know that's talking to my guy friends and everything too. And that is that women, we're programmed to believe that our worth is based on how we look,
Yep.
and that we're not lovable if we have pudgy legs, or fat around the stomach, or we our breasts are too big or they're too small, or they're
Yep.
the day I heard Shania Twain say in an interview that her legs were too big, I was just like, okay, if a woman who has millions of dollars and millions of men would do anything to have her, if she feels that she's not enough, what hope do the rest of us have?
Right.
Right? And then you add in the cultural and the
Mhm.
chauvinistic, that women are second class citizens.
Yep.
I was speaking with one client who was Asiatic background, and she had literally been told by her parents, very matter of factly, that she was worth less than a pound of rice
Oh
because
my
she was
gosh.
a female, and it was at a time when in China they were only allowed to have one offspring, and they ended up with a girl, and boys were considered way more valuable, and they were really upset that they did not have a boy.
Gosh.
So imagine to be told that.
Yeah. Imagine that imprint. Mm-hmm.
Right. You are worth less. Now, great, wonderfully, she's doing amazing now. And you brought up another point, trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I have yet, and I'm sure you'll corroborate this, I have yet to meet somebody who has autoimmune conditions that has not had some form of trauma. And I know that Dr. Amy, like I was recently talking with even one of our mutual friends who is an expert in multiple sclerosis. And
Mm-hmm.
she said the very same thing, which is also an autoimmune neurological condition,
Yep.
that every single one of her clients has had trauma. And if they don't believe that they have trauma, there's a very good possibility that they just may not realize it. One, because they may have tamped it down so far that, right, because it was so traumatic.
Right.
Or because our society looks at it as, well, that's not trauma. That's just normal. That's to be expected. What do you mean a man groped you? Well, you must have been asking for it.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yep.
And
Very
then,
common.
right. So there's the personal trauma. And I'll add in there, like, I did this very unscientific experiment, informal experiment one time. I was in a doctor's lounge. I was doing my internal medicine rotation. And we got talking about bullying as children. And I asked the question, who here has been bullied? And every single doctor put up their hand. So that may be one reason why we get into what we do. But on the other hand, that's trauma and it's setting us up for failure. And so there's examples of personal trauma. Then there's intergenerational trauma, where
Mm-hmm.
our parents and grandparents have experienced trauma and they have passed their feelings, their fears, their responses onto us through their teaching. Right? It's been
Yep.
well documented in the offspring, for instance, of Holocaust victims.
It has been. We can actually see it in their genes, in their DNA.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's the next one that I lovingly call epigenetic PTSD
Mm-hmm.
and trauma. And that is where, as Dr. Amy, you just mentioned, that they now realize that trauma actually modifies the expression of your DNA. And so that fear responses can be passed down to offspring, even if we've never met them. Physical, it impacts us physically. Like they've shown that people who were the offspring of the former Civil War POWs in the
Mm-hmm.
States, that children that were born afterwards had a higher mortality rate and a decreased longevity compared to their siblings who were raised in the same household. And the only difference between them was that they were born afterwards, right? So when we start to think back, go, based on my culture,
Mm-hmm.
and my country's historical background, and maybe whatever personal history that I know of in my family, how much trauma have we all collectively experienced and that I am bearing the brunt of? And this is where that trauma may be impacting us without us even knowing. And what I have realized, and what I realized and back then, is that yes, I was doing everything right that I knew of consciously. But what I didn't realize, and just like an iceberg, has like the biggest, baddest, most dangerous part of it is the Hulk underneath the surface,
Underneath.
the hidden part,
Yep.
right? The dangerous part, the Titanic
Yep.
found out the hard way,
Yep.
to be facetious, speaking of traumas, that our unconscious programming and the unconscious trauma and the unconscious fears and belief systems that we carry with us, which is basically our hardwiring in our unconscious mind that runs the show 99% of the time,
Mhm.
causes massive inefficiencies, energy inefficiencies. And just like you can take, I have an iMac over here. I'm looking over here because my iMac is sitting over there, brand new. Got it 2 weeks into COVID. So I wasn't able to get like all the normal stuff done with it. And I'm like thinking to myself, this is a piece of crap. Like, I've never had an iMac before. I was a MacBook Pro before, girl.
Yep.
You know, and I had this 10-year-old MacBook Pro that I just loved and I babied along. And then my brother spilt some wine on it. And so it was kind of kaput. And I'm like, oh no, I got to do something. What am I going to do? I need a computer. So I got this iMac and I'm like, what is wrong with this computer? It's supposed to be like the best of the best. It's Apple, right? Like,
right.
Did they go to pot like in the last 10 years since I bought my last one? Like, what's going on? And this went on for months and months and months where it would freeze. I'd get the wheel of death. And I was on the phone constantly with Apple. My iCloud wasn't syncing across my devices. They couldn't figure it out. The iCloud engineers could not figure it out. Like literally, I was on like a first name basis with all like the top supervisors in Apple. I had their cell phone numbers.
Yes.
Like, right? Like they were doing their best. They couldn't figure it out. And finally, lockdown ended, the first time. And I was able to take it back to the place where I bought it and said, look, this is a piece of poop.
Right.
And I don't want this. There's got to be something. What can we do here? And they're like, I don't know, ma'am. We're all we can do is like wipe it clean and start it right from scratch. You'll lose everything on it. It's the best that we can do. I'm like, I can't use it anyway. Just do what you got to do. And so they did. They wiped it clean. And I get it back. And aside from the fact that none of my documents or anything on there, I'm like, wow, this is like really, really, really well. This is like, it's like it's brand new. This is like it's supposed to, right? What was the difference? The very first time that I bought it from them, they transferred all the information from my beloved MacBook Pro. And without me knowing it, it had a programming glitch that I just put down to, oh, it's old. That's why it's a little slower. It doesn't have enough RAM, right? No. And that programming glitch got transferred over into my beautiful, sleek, new, high-performing iMac and made it run like crap. And that is unfortunately what the faulty programming happened to us. And so what I've realized is that you can do everything right. And if those energy efficiencies are sucking the energy out of you, like energy vampires, like Harry Potter's Dementors, just sucking the life right out of you, then you're going to crash and burn like I did. And that's what happened.
Talk to me about that, the crash and burn, because that's really where I think a lot of the thyroid patients fall into, is that they will either in the very beginning, before they're diagnosed or while they're trying to find a diagnosis, find out what's wrong with them, they will be in that fight or flight mode. Like, what is wrong with me? Oh, I'm super really tired. I'm tired all the time, but I want to know what's wrong with me. And I'm anxious and I'm depressed at the same time. And it's kind of like this back and forth where you can almost see the car crash coming. I mean, a perfect analogy, and using your situation and your experience, you can see them headed toward that wall. And a lot of it is, I mean, number one, it's that genetic switch. Like you said, epigenetics can be good, but they can be bad as well. We can use epigenetics to reverse something and not turn on a gene like an Alzheimer's gene, but epigenetics can work the other way, in that it does flip on that Hashimoto's switch, and then it starts affecting sex hormones and it starts affecting cortisol. So what do you see in that beginning stage? Well, I mean, it might have been going on for a while for you, but kind of that beginning stage of crash and burn. before someone is going to hit the wall? What is going on with them physiologically? What's going on with their adrenals? What's going on with the cortisol? How is it affecting autoimmune? Can you tie that together?
Oh, absolutely. That's an awesome question. Thanks, Dr. Amy. When you are initially under stress, you're in survival mode. And this is, we need survival mode, right? That's historically what kept us alive, right? It's that, you may have heard of fight or flight or freeze or faint. Dr. Hans Selye coined those terms. Dr. Hans Selye is considered the father of stress. And because he not only understood that stress impacts us all, he documented the very real physical impacts of it. And so when we're first in fight or flight or freeze or faint, as the case may be, we're hardwired. There's no right or wrong. We're hardwired to either run like a gazelle, or to turn and fight like a honey badger, or to freeze and just shiver and hope they don't notice us like a rabbit, or to faint like a possum and play dead and hope they don't notice us. All right. It's we fall into one of those categories. And again, no right or wrong. It is what it is. Our adrenaline ramps up and we get ready for whatever we need to do, right? To hopefully stay alive. Then as time goes on, and most animals, like say a gazelle is being chased by a lion, that gazelle will run for its life, literally. And then hopefully if it leaves the lion behind, within about 20 minutes, it literally just shakes it off and it goes back to grazing.
Yeah.
Right. Very rarely in the animal kingdom do they go out of what's called that acute or that initial phase. You either survive or you don't.
Right.
Right. It's not like an Iron Man of being chased by a lion.
Yeah, they're not worrying about like, am I going to get chased again in another 5 minutes? Is another lion going to come in an hour?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the thing is, that is what we need to happen to keep us alive in the moment. And if they do need to go on a more than just a sprint, we have our next stress hormone, cortisol, that ramps up, and it's like for the long haul. It's not as effective as the adrenaline. And at the same time, it's like the long hauler for us. It keeps us going and going and going. And again, in the animal kingdom, it'll get used and then it has a chance to rest and relax, right? And reset. We are the only animals in the universe that we know of who don't just stay in the moment. We have this amazing ability to think about the past. And because we are up until now hardwired by millennia of cautious pessimism that kept us alive, right? There's that fear-based teaching, right? It kept us alive, but at the same time, it makes us prone to go back and worry about that, or dwell on that fight that we had with our spouse, or that negative review we got at work, or, as you said, future pace, and go, oh my God, how am I going to pay my mortgage this month? Or what's going to happen? Am I going to lose my job if I take 2 weeks vacation, even though I have it coming to me? Right? We're the only ones that can live in the past and in the future, at least in our heads.
Yep.
And when we do, because we are, for now, hardwired, I'm on a mission to change this.
Right.
We are hardwired to think negatively and automatically go to that. We're not thinking about the wonderful time that we had or the wonderful time we're going to have. We're thinking about all the negative things that can happen and go wrong, right? That is, we're putting ourselves constantly in stress mode, and we don't get a chance to have a break from it. And what Dr. Selye showed was that when you are under chronic stress, the physical impacts on the body are that the cortisol causes you to gain weight. It messes with your sleep. it messes with your hormones, right? It increases your blood sugar, which is why you're more prone to diabetes, you're more prone to heart disease, you're more prone to infections, because your immune system takes a nosedive. Well, guess what? Your immune system is also necessary for your proper functioning of your hormones and all of your internal workings. And when your immune system goes haywire, inflammation takes place. And I'm sure you've heard that word from Dr. Amy, because she's amazing and deals with inflammation in her way a lot. I know. It's like one place I don't have to explain what inflammation is.
Right.
Inflammation is a derangement of the immune system, and it can result in allergies, in sensitivities, in autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's, like multiple sclerosis, and a host of other ones. And it can also, because your immune system is depressed, you can be more prone to cancer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so that is how chronic stress ramps up inflammation and causes or contributes to autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's. And when you think back to the what I just said about the energy efficiency, if you can heal the energy inefficiencies, all of a sudden your body has that ability to calm the stress response, allow the cortisol to go back down, and to upregulate the immune system genes, downregulate the inflammatory genes, and then lo and behold, you can start healing. Because up until that point, until you take care of that very important factor, you can do everything right, even with respect to the Hashimoto's and trying to heal it, taking all of Dr. Amy's great advice. And if you are constantly under stress and strain and trauma and living the impacts of that, you're not going to get better.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because it's so, admittedly, stress is something that I tend to brush over. I pay attention to it, but I need to circle back to it more, because in talking to you today, I'm thinking of all of the patients who they'll write me and they'll say, well, you know what? I'm at a standpoint with my weight. I'm still experiencing a lot of fatigue. Maybe my cycles are still messed up. And I dive into the biology. Okay, where are your thyroid levels? Maybe we need to increase the medication. Maybe we need to test again. Maybe we need to do this. How's your diet? But stress, if we just come back to that, which everybody is under, and then some more than others, but we're all experiencing it.
Yeah.
That could be the very root cause of the inflammation that is occurring, that is preventing what we're trying to do from working. And that's why certain patients are experiencing, an inability to lose weight again. And I'm looking at the numbers going, but they're all optimal, but they're great. We have you more than optimal, or you're eating well, this, that. And they're doing all the things like you said that you were doing. Even before your crash, you were doing all the things. Of course you were. You're a chiropractor. You were eating organic. You were doing everything. And they might be doing everything too, but at the same time, not paying enough attention, or the right attention. We don't want to hyper focus on stress, but not paying the right attention to the stress in their life and not dealing with it in the proper way.
Yeah, it's one very important pillar.
Very important.
And that is why, and I love giving analogies. And so
Me too.
I don't know about you, Dr. Amy, not that I do it often. And when I'm driving, I love to go fast. And so while I've never driven one, the idea of driving a Bugatti and going as fast as you can, just like that, to me is like bucket list, man. That's on my bucket list to do.
Gotta do it.
I'll have to borrow somebody else's because I think I'm too practical to buy one myself. But anyway, the point is, it's like when I talk energy efficiencies, it's like you're behind the wheel of that Bugatti and you've got your foot down on the gas pedal, like right down, and you're ready to go as fast and far as you can, but your left foot is riding the brake.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Very nice analogy. Love that.
Yeah. Doesn't that make sense? It's like you're either not going to go as far and fast as you want, or stuff is gonna wear out.
Mm-hmm.
Then you add into it, let's call it the functional medicine fuel of putting everything right into the gas tank,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even have to have impurities. If you have impurities, if you're going the conventional route, there's probably impurities in there, just saying.
Right.
But we're talking the functional medicine fuel,
Right.
right? The best of the best of the best. And what if there's a leak in the gas line, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the fuel's not getting to where it needs to go.
Yep.
It's all energy inefficiencies and places that they can be patched up, that when you take your foot off the gas pedal, you make sure that you have the best of the best fuel going in, and that it's getting to where it needs to go, and that everything is working, in perfect synchrony, because that's what we are, right? We are this amazing self-healing organism with 100 billion brain cells, right? We are capable of far more in so many ways, including healing ourselves
Mm-hmm.
of autoimmune conditions. That when we can correct all of that, then we get to drive that Bugatti as fast as we want.
Oh, that's so sexy and such a great analogy. I love it.
I love
That's
that.
so perfect. It's so perfect. And just to circle back before we get into what can people do, just some
Mhm,
basic practical tips. I want to circle back to something that you said about stress turning on cancer, because we think about stress and we think about somebody will have a migraine or they'll just be low energy, but we don't think about the big ones. Like our colleague who specializes in MS said,
mhm,
stress is one of those triggers that flips the switch when we're talking about cancer. I remember when my dad got his cancer diagnosis of lymphoma,
mhm,
there was a major stressful event that happened a month or two before. So we all know that we have cancer genes. Everybody does. You're not going to escape that. You have some messed up, funky little genes in your body that might just stay funky for a while, or because of stress or because of toxins or heavy metals or whatever exposure,
mhm.
it can turn that on. And then cancer goes, hello, I'm here, unfortunately. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because a lot of people don't attribute that turning on of any kind of disease, be it autoimmune, Hashimoto's, cancer, MS, any disease. They don't go back to that root and attribute it to stress, be it past stress, childhood, generational, or just what you're dealing with right now.
Mhm.
They're not really tying all the pieces together. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, not to scare people, but just to make them aware that we need to move on to this next step of doing some practical things, maybe working with someone. But we'll get into how they can work with you in a minute. But can you give them some, what do you tell people to do right now just to start that ball rolling of decreasing the stressors in their life, present and past?
Mm, I love that question. Thank you. And the first thing that I recommend is that I teach what I call SOS tools and techniques. And the reason I call them SOS, for those of a certain age and beyond, SOS stands for Save Our Souls, and it was the emergency, like the signal, distress signal that ships used to send out. And and so one of the things to know, and the reason why we often don't do exactly what we need to be doing to help ourselves, like calling Dr. Amy and say, "Yo, I need help here," is because when you are under stress, the survival mode literally like takes your frontal, it's called your prefrontal cortex, your executive team here, offline,
Mhm.
right? In other words, and when I say your executive team, it's what's responsible for being able to think clearly, to remember, like your working memory, to think logically, to come up with creative solutions, to make good decisions and then act on those good decisions. Oh, and emotional inhibition, right? All of that is in your rock star executive team that you have in behind your forehead, your prefrontal cortex. And you want it that way when you're in survival mode, because hypothetically, if you were being, chased by a saber-toothed tiger, that's not the time to go, let me think about this for a moment. Do you think it'd be better for me to run right now, or should I stand and fight? No.
Right.
That is when, just like the gazelle or the honey badger, it's time for action and doing whatever you are hardwired to do. In other words, take the thinking out of it completely. The challenge is when we are under chronic stress, as we are, right? Our emotion center, our 5-alarm emotion center, our amygdala in our brain is just like, wow, 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 danger, danger, Will Robinson. It's like the sirens are going off all the time.
Right.
Anybody live near a busy fire station? And the sirens are going like all the time.
Yeah. Or New York City all the time. Yeah.
Okay, exactly. So when it's that case, guess what? This is like wiped off the map. And it's like, have a thought in your head. Good luck. Brain fog. Oh yeah. Right. Confusion. Oh yeah. Crying at the drop of a hat. How about flying off the handle at your loved ones or boss when you really shouldn't have? Yeah.
Yep.
Right. There's that emotional inhibition that's not there. Right. So this is why it's so important for us to have the SOS tools and techniques, so that then we can actually kickstart our executive team back in action, so that we can start making the changes that we need. And it can take just seconds. It can just take seconds. And I'm happy to show, I don't know how much time we have left, but I'm happy to show how. You tell me how much time we have and I'll show.
We have about 5 minutes, so I want to definitely get to how they can reach out to you, but can you show us in that amount of time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. One of the first things that I love to teach is that your actions create your feelings. So when you are feeling down and low and tired, and you're like this, oh my God, I just, right? All of you do this, like, and just see how you feel.
Yeah,
Like,
you
probably feel like crap,
Yep.
right? Then sit up or stand up straight. There's a reason why I stand in my little stand-up office, right? It's so that I can stand up straight and shoulders back, chin up, gaze straight forward, a little smile playing on your face, right? And stand with your feet a little bit apart. We women are, we're taught to like, oh, we have to be demure, we have to close down like this. No. Let's get the feet apart. Let's put your hands on your hips and then smile. And if you need to, stick a pencil in it and do this. Why? Because when you do this, not only does it look funny, go ahead and laugh. You're allowed to laugh at me. I'm totally happy for people to laugh. It's causing your muscles, smile muscles, to engage. And all of this, all these muscles that you're using actually send the message up to your brain. I'm strong. I'm confident. I have what it takes. And I'm happy. And so the brain says, oh, she's happy. I'm going to give her more serotonin. Oh, she's strong and confident. I don't need to have the 5 alarms going.
No drugs needed.
No
How about that?
drugs needed. There's a reason why in basic boot camp, or whatever they call it for the military, basic training, that's what it's called, that they spend so much time on posture, right? Because your body language talks actually even more to you than it does to others. So by doing that and putting a smile on your face, and I recommend tying this to a habit, like going to the bathroom. We tend to do that throughout the day, right? So every time you go to wash your hands, you can wash your hands first. And then stand up straight and smile. And for good measure, tell yourself how proud you are of yourself and how much you love each other, how much you love yourself. I'm proud of you. You're beautiful. You're a genius. You are awesome. And walk out.
Yes.
right? How long did that take?
I know. I love it. It actually does make a
You go to
difference
the
when you say
bathroom in
that.
a day,
Yeah.
right? So every hour or two, whatever, it's like
Yep.
you can reset your stress response just like that. Take lipstick or a dry erase pen or marker or something, and I did this, and my sons are used to me. I did this where I drew like a big heart, like right where their face would go.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote "I love you" on the
Oh,
mirror, so that every time they looked in the mirror, or I looked in the mirror, guess what? They see "I love you."
I love that. That's so amazing. That's something nice that you can do for somebody else. And then
Yeah,
for you, well, write it for yourself too. So that when you're looking in the mirror, they're like, hello, sexy.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And if you're worried about what other people think, we'll deal with that another time, because
Yeah.
that's another fear. Just and even if you can't, it's that reminder to yourself that every single time that you go to the bathroom, smile and tell yourself how much you love yourself and how amazing you are and how proud you are of yourself, and stand up straight
Mm-hmm.
and chin up and look at yourself, because that's also speaking to your inner child, that wounded inner child, because your inner child sees you, which happens to look probably a lot like your parents, especially your
This
same sex
is
parent. And it's like giving the message to your wounded inner child from your same sex parent, perhaps the message that you never got from them.
that we never got. This is definitely a part A, because we need to dive more into this in a part B. But just even that one thing that you gave us, Dr. Irene, is so powerful. I mean, it literally just doing that with you changed
Mhm.
my demeanor. Just putting a smile, I'm like, oh, hey, this is really cool. That changed my demeanor. So
And
I,
teachers
I
like
love
Ray
that tip.
have that code word, stick a pencil in it.
I know, stick a pencil in. I love it. But that's so powerful. So I really believe, I mean, number one, we have to bring you back on because I do want to dive into all those other things, because a lot of people have deep-seated thoughts of and cares about what other people think about them, and that's driving their body to respond in a certain way. I have certain patients that they even go into a medication change anxious and fearful, because and then it's almost like they set themselves up for a side effect or not being able to tolerate it because they believe it in their head beforehand. We need to get we just need to get more into this. So before I let you leave, and there will be a part B, we'll plan this out. Before I let you leave, if people like myself are just enthralled by your story and what you do, can you tell them how, if they want to work with you, if they want to go deeper, if they know, if they're listening and they're not in their head the whole time you've been talking and saying, I know I have trauma, I know I have childhood trauma, maybe they went through something very similar to what you went through with an alcoholic parent that just ingrained in themselves that they're not good enough or they have to perform. How can they get in touch with you? How can they work with you?
I love it, and I'm so happy. I'd love to come back. Thank you for
Definitely. Yeah.
for that. One of the things that I gave you was a workbook that your listeners can download,
Mm-hmm.
and it works through the what I call the 5-step blueprint to shift from stress to success, and the 4 major blocks that are derailing their success and blocking them. And it's an awareness. It's called awakening awareness around your success blocks. And remember what I said, success is all areas, including your health and energy, right? So, and I guarantee that if you are being derailed in one area of your life, like with Hashimoto's, it's impacting other areas of your life if you go looking for it.
Yeah.
And so this is a beautiful exercise, because I say awareness is 80% of the battle and the solution. So even just by doing these exercises that are in this workbook, you can start to go, wow, right? To give you that sense. And then if you choose to go deeper, I do have a 4-week boot camp. It's called the Retrain Your Brain Boot Camp. And it's all designed to release those blockages at an unconscious level. at each of the 5 steps in the blueprint, as well as the 4 major steps. And I'll give like a sneak preview. Your faulty programming is one, your trauma is another. We go through self-sabotage and we go through fears.
Yep.
And really blast away. I mean, we could spend months on it, and this 4-week boot camp has the biggest, baddest barriers that have been blocking you from having the health, life, and happiness that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I will be running it's self-study, and I have a group-led coaching version of it starting January 7th. So I'm sure that we can, January 17th, that I'm sure we can get that out to your listeners as well.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And we will put all of those links in the show notes for everyone to grab, along with the contact information for you to join that group program or the 4-week boot camp, whatever appeals to the person. But I love that you're putting it all in 4 weeks, because people want to get shit done. Like, they just want to like dive in and do it and get results. And so I love that you did an intensive, a 4-week. And I think I think that speaks to a lot of people, because they want results and they want them fast. And that's a great way to give it to them. So, well, Dr. Irene, thank you so much for coming on here. I mean, if people are listening, they couldn't see my face during the whole time, but I was just enthralled with your story and the information you provided. And it's so powerful, and it has even impacted me and how I will further deal with my patients, really focusing a little bit more on that stress piece, because it needs to be. So thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We will be talking again, and I'm sure all of the listeners will grab your download. So
thank you, my friend.
Love you so much. All right. We will talk soon.
Mm-hmm.